time of social distancing. So let's see, Amy, since we've got you going, why don't I hand off the introduction baton to you next?
Absolutely. Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Amy Clark. I am with Hilton Worldwide Sales, a co-leader of the association group sales team for the brand. And previously, I was with Helms Briscoe for a number of years, leading the Southeast team. Both in the case of Helms Briscoe and in the case of Hilton, these are entirely remote environments. And so while at Hilton, we may have a number of resources to help us to work remote, at Helms Briscoe, the business model is as independent contractors. So I worked with a number of team members who were joining the remote environment for the first time and quite frankly had to find their own way flying solo and determine their own guidelines, their own tools, their own rhythm. And so that's one of the things that I will be talking about today.
Thank you. Chief Slacker, would you like to go next?
Chief Slacker, AKA Mike Pennington, comma, CAE. So I got that in there for you, Wendy. I have been in and around association management stuff for about 15 years now. Currently, I'm the Vice President of Operations for the Atlanta and Georgia Apartment Associations. So we are the trade association representing apartment communities across mostly the city, but also the state of Georgia. I've been only there for like 3 or 4 months. For the 3 years before that, I worked for Novi AMS software database system, and we were completely remote. Our staff of 15 was all over the country. So definitely lived working for a software company, a relatively new software company. We were all about the technology, about working from home. So Zoom, Slack, those became second languages for us. So I look forward to talking to you about how we used Slack and how Slack can be used, and teach you how to be a Slacker.
Thank you. Carl, let's hear from you next.
Okay, so I'm Carl Kirsch. I work with Meeting Expectations. I'm the Vice President for our association management business practice. So I'm involved in dozens of associations and their corresponding meetings and whatnot. And it was last week we were just sort of ruminating about, gee, what would we do since we work in an office in Atlanta? There's about 65 of us that actually go into the office, and said, what if they did one of those 15-day shelter in places? How would we handle that? So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we handle that, since we are all working remote now, and what is working and what is not working.
Thank you. And Damien.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Damien Cavanaugh, Executive Director of MISBO, which is the Southern Association for Business Officers in Independent Schools, a related organization with Lori's at SAIS. And also I'm just downstairs, probably 100 feet, 50 or 100 feet away from where Wendy is upstairs, managing cats. So I've got an office here at the house as well, and she does also. I'm going to talk a little bit about Dropbox and some of the different features. But before we get too far into this, let's all smile for the camera, please. Smile pretty, smile pretty, smile pretty. Thank you very much. That'll come later on. I'll turn it back over. I think we might have a poll.
We do have a poll. So one of the things you can do in Zoom is polling, and it should pop up on your screen once Wendy activates it. We came up with a couple of questions.
Damien.
Once
Damien
Damien
is me.
it.
Damien, I think you have to start the poll.
Now, let's see. I'm not seeing how we can answer the question. Is everybody else answering the question?
Yes.
Okay.
I can see the multiple choice boxes.
Oh, moderator can't.
Co-hosts don't answer.
Well, there you go. See, we're learning together. I don't get to answer the poll.
I don't get to answer the poll either.
That's okay.
So everybody else get to it.
Right.
Yeah, I guess I'm not allowed to vote either.
Yeah.
I can make y'all not co-host.
No, it's fine. We know what we're doing, but kind of. And while you guys are filling out the poll, I will also mention that Amy and I are co-chairs of the Pyjama Brigade SIG this year. Little did we know when we took on that title that everyone in GSAE would qualify for membership, pretty much.
Yay!
During our term. All right, so so we've got some poll results coming in. Are you currently working from home? That would be everyone so far. Were you working from home prior to this week? 70% no, 30% yes.
70%.
Are you working from home on a temporary, TBD, or permanent basis? So we're split. TBD is 50%. We understand that. And then what software you currently use. So right now we've got, most people already use Zoom. I figured that. So I'm supposed to talk about Zoom. So we will zoom through my Zoom remarks since most of you are already familiar with it. Dropbox 40%, Slack 20%, other video conferencing, other items, and I think that is the end of the poll. All right. Do we shut down the polling time? Or are we going to leave it open for latecomers? How does that work? Okay, well, we'll do whatever
Damien's
Damian wants
answering
to
or I'm
do.
answering.
It's
I
on you.
think we can shut it down so we can see.
Wendy,
Okay.
it's on you now.
Awesome. So we're still at 73% of folks who were not working from home prior to this week. So that's why we're here, kind of help everybody figure this out. So thank you for participating in that. So those of us who introduced ourselves earlier all have a little bit of an assigned topic that we're going to chat about, but we also really wanted to set this up to just address your questions and challenges, things that you're experiencing for those of you who are working from home on the fly, as Carl talked about, taking your office virtual with very little planning. My organization has been virtual for 4 years, but we did it with lots of testing and planning and figuring things out and not on the fly. So we just want to help as much as we can. So Amy, over to you, my friend.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My task this morning is to talk about how to stay both productive and sane. We have all found ourselves in an unusual and unprecedented situation. And so to lay the foundation for this conversation before we start to talk about tools and such, let's talk about what we all have in common right now, which is we're living the same reality. And when in our lifetime, if ever, and perhaps never again, will we as a community, as a country, as a world, be living the same reality? And so in the business sector for many years, when we've been preaching empathy and emotional intelligence, there is no better time than right now for us to exercise those qualities and to lead with kindness and compassion, because we are all living the same reality. And thinking ahead to what we will learn, and what I appreciate about what we're living right now is that will hopefully be a lesson that we will take with us far, far into the future. So I'd like to discuss the 4 B's: boundaries, bundle and block, and balance. So to lay the foundation for your work at home, when perhaps everyone is at home, so this is a very unusual circumstance for the remote working environment. First of all, everyone in the household has to understand what the rules of engagement are. There have to be boundaries. Regardless of whether it's only you, your significant other, your children, whatever ages they may be, I would recommend that you put into place some boundaries around how this is going to work. Not only physical boundaries, because we each need space to work, but how's the day going to go? Do you need to have family meetings on a regular basis? Even if you establish boundaries this week, And maybe you need to regroup at the end of the week. How's it going? Is this working? So boundaries in the homework environment are very, very important. And what I would encourage you to stay focused on is that you and every member of your family, to some extent, depending on their age, you are in charge of your day. So we all have many different requirements and obligations pulling us at different times of the day and with work, professional, personal life. But take with you that you are in charge of your day. So how are you going to be in charge of your day? You're going to bundle and you're going to block. That doesn't mean blocking other people from getting to you, although that might feel like a thing you want to do. What that means is, how can you bundle tasks and how can you time block? You know, time blocking in the work environment is not a new concept, but you might have to put some very strict regimens in place for time blocking given the current environment with so many people at home. And, you know, bundling your task is something that will allow you to also be more productive. I'm not saying anything that you guys can't find online, and I would encourage you to continue to use all of the external resources that you have. You cannot flip more than 2 pages online at the moment to find lots of resources about how to manage this environment. But for me and what I know about working in the home environment and managing individuals who work in the home environment, bundling like tasks, and in this case, that might be family tasks as well as work tasks. You know, multitasking, we've learned, does not work for us. And it's going to be really difficult in the homework environment right now. So take that with you and then work in time blocks, work in chunks. I personally like to have a little competition with myself about how fast can I do this, or how much longer do I have to do this? You know, if I have something that is really, really tedious but must be done, I'm like, I'm going to do this until 1 p.m. and then that's it. I'm not doing it anymore today. So create those little competitions with yourself. And lastly, the concept of balance. You know, we have to take care of ourselves right now as much mentally as we do physically. And that is, you can't do the same thing all day, every day, right? You can't be on email every day. You can't be with your kids all day, every day, probably. And so be sure that you find time for yourself, principally, whatever that looks like. If you're a morning person, get up that extra 30 minutes early before the household starts stirring. If you're a night owl, then, you know, stay up later when it quiets down in the house. You know, the one thing that we are not limited on right now is being in nature. And I've spent a lot of time outside in the last week. You know, I got an email this week from Georgia State Park saying, we're open. So go find a trail, go sit in the woods, go sit at a picnic table by yourself, but bring all of your items with you so you can cover everything around you. But I would encourage you to do some things that you haven't done before, haven't done in a long time. So to bring my portion to a close, you have the opportunity to perhaps develop some new habits, to perhaps revisit some things that you haven't done for a long time that you know deep in your heart, in your core, feed you, that you desire and that give you energy. So let's be creative and let's take some really positive messages from this period of time into the future, because we all will be able to be out hugging each other again at some point, hopefully very soon. So with that, I'll pass to the next presenter or any questions.
Yeah, do we have any questions or comments before we move on?
I'll add a comment if I can. One thing, and I think the guys at Healthy by Association, so Aaron and Jim and all those guys would say, and it kind of piggybacking on Amy talking about physical activity, is add physical activity.
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy to get sucked into this mode of, well, I'm at home, so I can just sit at my computer, I can do work, but get up and like once an hour, walk around the house or walk up and down your stairs or do something that gets the blood flowing, get your eyes off your screen. That's even if you're in the office or home, but I think we're more susceptible to getting stuck in this rut where we don't do that when we're at home. To maintain sanity when we're locked in the house with the kids for who knows how long, you've got to get up and get the blood flowing, or else you're going to really, really, really start to get in the rut.
I've actually been complaining about Zoom this week because everybody is on Zoom this week. And before, if I was just on a phone call, I could walk around. Now that I have to be sitting in front of the computer all day, literally is.
Yeah. All things in moderation. That's what we need to live by right now. All things in moderation.
Yeah, Jared, I mean, get a standing desk or an ironing board to serve as a standing desk.
Right.
I mean, that totally works.
I love that.
I use the bar in my kitchen. I alternate from my sitting desk to the bar in my kitchen to stand for a portion of the day.
That's smart.
I'm totally on board with going to the bar. That was different.
Got everything around me.
Moderation.
Right.
And as a note, we're also capturing the chats. And so if you don't want to unmute really quickly and say what you're out loud, what you're thinking, use the chat feature. And we'll go from those as well. I'm going to mute and let, I believe,
Damien
has presents for us.
Hello, everyone. I am going to do a screen share as well because I'm going to talk a little bit about Dropbox. And so I'm just going to jump right in and show you Dropbox and show you just a couple of quick things about it. Dropbox is a really unique tool, and it's really a file sharing tool and a file repository at its heart. That's really what it is. So you all are well enough aware of sort of old school file share services, whether it's located on a server somewhere or located on your hard drive that you pass files around through email or through thumb drives or something like that. Well, technology has come a little bit further than that. So if you're still on, passing files around purely through those mechanisms, or even an old 3.5-inch floppy disk, you really do need to get into the new world. Dropbox is one of several services that do file sharing. The other main players are, of course, Google and Google Drive and Microsoft's SharePoint. All three of these platforms, and there are other platforms as well, all three of them have a lot of great things about them, and all three of them have some liabilities and some limitations as well. I'm just going to focus on Dropbox only because A, it's what we use, but B, because it's really one of the most prevalent in business today, and getting more market share as time goes on. Part of the reason is because there are no known hacks to Dropbox ever. There's one, if you Google it, that will pop up, but it was a third party that was hacked. So it's an unbelievably secure platform, which is really, really remarkable. So within the Dropbox world, and I want to make sure that I'm still sharing. I think I'm still sharing. Yes. I'm going to stop the share and reshare real quick. Within the Dropbox world, it actually looks just like any kind of Windows Explorer, or it can for you. So I'm going to use PC terms, not Mac terms. Y'all who are Mac people can just translate it into Mac language. But using the File Explorer, all of your documents can be organized exactly like they would have been otherwise. And I'm going to show you, this is just a variety of different things. And this one here is actually a shared folder between MISBO and SAIS on a conference that we put on together. But I'm going to go into this personal folder here and just pull up something here, recipes, because everybody's got to eat, right? So eating's great, and I like to cook a lot, and so I'm going to share this folder with everyone, and I'm going to ask you to put things into this folder. But before I do that, look at this photo here. Guess what that is? That is actually the picture that I just took. And I took it on my phone. You saw me do it. And then what you didn't see is from my phone, from the Dropbox app, I was able to upload it straight into this file. So from my phone, I actually have access to all of my files, my entire file structure, and I can access them, read them on the fly, ignore them on the fly, whatever it is that I might want to do. One of my favorite things, just so you know right now, is to make paella. Paella is delicious. If you don't know what paella is, man, you're just missing out. But that's all right, because I'm going to give you this recipe. So I'll let this document open up for you real quick, and you can see paella, some ingredients here. You don't have to use the headless shrimp if you don't want to. That's okay. But there's a great recipe for you. What I want to do is I'm actually going to share this whole recipe folder. So I will right-click on it, and I get a menu here very quickly that is a Dropbox menu. So share, send with transfer. So if you got really big files, you can send them with the transfer feature. It's files that are so big that you really can't send them through your regular email. But I'm going to do this. I'm going to copy the Dropbox link. So now it's copied for me. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to send everyone a quick email about it. So now you've got that in your email. So you've got the Dropbox link to it. Let me see if I can get the chat back up. Where did the chat go? Chat. So chat, hopefully you can see the chat window here. And I will just paste it, send it. So now you've got that Dropbox link, which was pretty easy and pretty straightforward to do. What I also want to do, though, is I actually want to request files from you. So I'm going to click on File Request, and it'll take me to Dropbox Online. And I'm going to make a new file request here. Give me your recipes. We're going to put it in the recipes. Next. And it'll give me a link here. Same type thing. I'm going to send this to you in email. And I'm also going to very quickly send it to you in the chat. And so now what you have is an opportunity to go to this link, and I've just requested a file from you. So this is what's in here now. Let's see, someone will put one in there pretty quickly, I'm sure. So I've shown you just some of the very quick, very easy features of Dropbox. I mean, some of the most pertinent ones that are there. I want to go very quickly into this. This is Awards 2019. This is GSAE award stuff, because guess who gets to help with that? I actually don't want that in my Dropbox anymore. I'm tired of having it here. I actually need to share my other screen with you. Hold on just a second. Let me stop the share and start the share on the other screen, because I use two screens at once. So here is my Dropbox, and I'm tired of sharing that. So I'm going to go into my Dropbox down here and my preferences, and I will do something that is called Selective Sync. So under my Sync button, I have Selective Sync. And what will happen is this will populate with absolutely all the files that I have in my Dropbox. But the one that I'm tired of seeing is Awards 2019, so I'm just going to take it away. So it still lives in my online Dropbox, but I don't want it to replicate to my computer anymore. So in other words, what just happened is I allowed Dropbox to stop syncing several of my files. So Dropbox as a storage unit has the ability, so my version of it has, I think, 2 terabytes of information, which is an enormous amount of information, as you can imagine, and more than you might actually need at any given time. But what happens is we store everything, we store everything in Dropbox for our entire work life, for all of MSBO. And then we share out amongst each other several specific files. So I'll show you the entire structure here. It's quite a bit of it. But within this folder here, MSBO shared, this would be all of the files that we actually have that we share just within our staff. But you can see I've got quite a number more than that I don't share, quite a lot of them that are there. So with Selective Share, you're able to share ownership of files back and forth so that people can drop files in, take files away at the drop of a hat. Some of the other features of Dropbox, just very quickly, editing files online and knowing who's using them and who's got them open at any given time so that you don't create a conflict by saving over top of each other is just one of the built-in features. Leaving little nuggets of comments for each other is another feature. And there are many others that are features that I won't go into to bore you with, but it is a cool program to allow you to do a lot of sharing of documents is also a great way to collaborate back and forth with these documents. You're all probably familiar with Google Docs. Dropbox doesn't work like that. It really is a file sharing platform, so that you don't have people working on documents at the same time and overwriting each other. So with that, I'll stop and ask if there are any quick questions. Yes, right, thanks for that. There are 3 or 4 different levels of Dropbox. The free version is great, and the biggest limitation of the free version is just size. You're limited to a file, you're limited to an overall space allocation of 2 gigabytes. And while that's actually a lot that's a ton for just Excel spreadsheets or Word docs, once you get into anything more than that, let's say video or audio files or anything that's really extensive that you want to replicate, you're probably going to need to move from the free version up to one of the paid versions. And like I said, the lowest paid version has 2 terabytes of data storage, which is usually more than enough for any individual. The version up from that is a business or business versions where you have a shared allocation of data that can be parceled out to individuals. And there's some of that doesn't, some of your space only counts if you've downloaded it onto your computer as opposed to letting it reside purely in the cloud on Dropbox. So what Selective Sync does, and there are a couple ways to do it, but I'm just going to focus on Selective Sync that I showed you, is it allows you to have a whole lot more documents that are, let's call them in long-term storage. They're still accessible to you, but they're in long-term storage and they're not taking up any space on your physical hard drive. The files that you have on your physical hard drive, they are backed up automatically onto your Dropbox, but you have ready access to them because they live locally on your machine. So Dropbox allows you to have that combination of what do you want to have live locally on your machine and what do you want to have in the cloud. I can't imagine any of you have a computer that has 2 terabytes of hard drive space. That's really unusual this day and age. So mine is only a 256 gigabyte hard drive, which is pretty small. But I don't need more than that because most of it lives in the cloud. So I'll stop and ask if there are any questions.
Hey, Damien, do you have multiple Dropbox accounts?
There is a limitation to having more than one Dropbox account. Namely, you can only have one synced to your computer at a time. It's actually a pretty peculiar limitation. So what we did for MISBO, for those who had their own personal Dropbox accounts prior to MISBO integrating it, we allowed them, actually we said, you just get to keep your own personal one if you want to. So you don't have to use your MISBO email address and have MISBO own that account. So I have one account. Michelle, who is on this call as well, who works at MISBO, also has her account from before MISBO adopted it. So MISBO pays for it because we expect everyone to have it, but we have an individual solo account. The business version of Dropbox is one of the main features that is really great is that the company owns everything that's inside of that. And Lori from SAIS and Lori at SAS moved from the individual accounts to the business account fairly recently. And part of it is security. People leave, come and go. How do you get their files? It's a great question. It's an important question. For us at MISBO, we decided to go with all eight staff having an individual account as opposed to having the business account, and then using the share features as opposed to what the business and admin portal does for you. GSAE is moving towards the business platform as well, so they'll have the admin platform. But the answer is you can have as many accounts as you want. However, you can only have one of them synced to your machine at any given time, which is a peculiar limitation.
It seems like it's more of a strategic structural question for an association first, though, is to set up the parameters around what is happening where, how we share folders, how we share files, what has to be done. So, I mean, obviously that needs to be done for any kind of file sharing that's done, even if it's on a server in the office or if it's from home from Dropbox. But those conversations need to be had up front, I would assume.
Yeah.
I'll add one clarification that Damien alluded to, which is when you open Dropbox, when you're a first-time user, a common misconception or a step that is missed is you're operating Dropbox first from your browser, and you do need to sync it to your personal computer, because working in Dropbox from the browser is not really sustainable on a day-to-day basis. So when we were all viewing it on Damien's computer, just like you would see it on any other Windows device, that's what you want. You want it downloaded to your computer, syncing with your computer, and not trying to run from the browser all the time.
And if you see the little green marks here, it's not just because they're Irish, it's because they're actually actively synced. So while they are syncing, they turn blue, but for now they are actively synced. Oh, look at this, I've got a Wendy. I'm gonna pull this up. Look at that. All right. I hope she's muted, because she's probably yelling at me. All right, there we go. All right, I'll turn it over now to Mike for some Slack.
If I unmute myself, it'll probably be better. I'm actually really happy to hear that there are not tons of Slackers in the room, because usually when I give these, I go to a room to talk about Slack and everybody's already using it. So to see the 20% number that we had earlier in the poll makes me really happy. So Slack, let me back up a little bit. When I started at Novi 3.5 years ago, they said, okay, you're going to get a Zoom account and a Slack account. And they started naming all these things. I'd never heard of Slack at that point. So 3.5 years ago, they just had their IPO last year, or maybe 2 years ago. So it's becoming a thing now. It's amazing to me how quickly we adopted it, how quickly I adopted it, and how much it became a disruptor in terms of how we did communications for our office. Again, we were completely remote. And when I say remote, it wasn't like we're all in the same city and remote. We had people all over the country, a team of 15 people. And so to have effective communications, Slack became our internal communications tool, also slightly external, but I'll talk about that some too. I'm going to give you a statistic before I start. This is a made-up statistic, as 83.7% all of them are. They're made up on the spot. I would say that Slack for our team replaced internal emails 99% or more of our internal emails. We did not use email to communicate internally with our team at all anymore. It was Zoom or it was Slack. That was it. So I have a PowerPoint, which is going to be kind of dumb to do, but I'm going to do it anyway. So let me share screen. I'm going to show you this. I'm going to buzz through this thing crazy fast. Oh, sweet Moses. Allow Zoom to share your screen. Yes, Zoom is allowed to share my screen. Sorry, kids, I should have done this before. Well, I can't share my screen right now because Zoom won't let me. That's making me sad. That's going to make it really, really difficult to do this. Oh, are you seeing my screen now? Okay, good times.
It's working now. Yep.
Thank goodness. Technology is fun. So, come on. There we go. So, not a lot of Slackers in the room. So, when I was talking about this becoming the next big thing, a lot of people were saying this was the next big thing. And I was like, whatever, because we've seen the next big thing with this, with Dean Kamen came out with the Segways be the next big thing, or a Discman, because everybody wants to jog down the road with a CD playing on their arm because that's not going to skip. Next big thing. Google Glass, walking around like you look like you're from the 53rd century, did not make a whole lot of sense at that point. Ryan Leaf was supposed to be the next big thing and not Peyton Manning, and he ended up in jail most of his life. Don't get me started on Windows. We've seen the next big thing come along a lot, and it hasn't been the next big thing. To me, Slack actually is. Again, in our office, it replaced 99% of our email. So what this allows, I'll get to it actually now. What this allows is communications. I'm going to show you what it looks like once I finish this PowerPoint and show you kind of how it works. It's a communications tool. It's for big communications, for small communications. It can be one to many, can be one to one. It can be locked down to just people in certain groups. There are tons of options. Think of this as instant messaging on crack, or it's essentially replacing the old school listserv also. It allows focused and direct communication from one person to many, or many people to many. There's a concept in Slack called channels. I'm going to show you this, but think of it as, in association speak, think of it as a committee or as a SIG. You can go in and create your Pyjama Brigade SIG as a channel. And you can invite, say, Lori is going to invite everybody who's part of that SIG to be part of this channel. That means that group can communicate inside this channel, and the rest of the world that's inside the GSAE universe cannot see this communication going on. It's just for that group. So take this to an association. Say your board of directors has their own channel. They can be having board of directors conversations and the rest of the world's not seeing it. Think about it for your teams internally. If we just want our meetings team to be talking about what's going on with meeting planning, they can have their own channels. So it allows you to have specific conversations without the rest of the world seeing it in these private channels. Collaboration, you can share files all over the place. So it allows a lot of collaboration. Yes, Damien, it does integrate with Dropbox. And so that makes it a lot easier too. So you can actually share files straight from Dropbox through Zoom. You can tag people. This is a big part of this too. If you're sending a communication inside your board of directors channel and there's 30 people on your board of directors, and you want to specifically highlight a person in this, just do the same thing you do in Facebook. You type @ and then their name, and it's going to actually give them notification that they have a new message that was directed at them. You can thread replies. So think of this as like a scrolling page with a bunch of messages going on and on and on. If someone asks a question inside a channel, and then these conversations about other things are going on at the same time, the replies to that question could get lost in the flow as conversations continue to scroll up the screen. But if you created a threaded reply, you can go through there and just, you can attach your reply to the question itself so that as more messages come through, they'll be attached to that question. You can find them more easily. Screen sharing is a big part of it. So you can share your screen just like we're doing now through Zoom. So they have the same capabilities in Slack. You can set reminders, say at every Tuesday at 9 a.m., remind me that I have a phone call. So you can have Slack give you messages at certain times. You can pin things. This is important when we get into associations and when we get into antitrust. Think about if you have all of your vendor members in a certain room and they say, hey, we should all agree that we're not going to charge any more or any less than this. When you could pin a message at the top of the screen that will always be at the top of the screen and say things like, if you go into antitrust, we will shoot you on sight. You can have those messages pinned to the top so they're always visible. To me, this is the fun side of Slack, and this is what really draws you in, is that you can communicate with, most people call them GIFs, but it's actually pronounced GIF. So you can reply with GIFs. You can poll your audience like we did earlier on Zoom. There's some overlap of functionality, but there's a lot of fun things you can do inside Slack. Integrations I've talked about, basically every software you can think about is there. So let me kill this off and jump over into a live Slack window. So this is my Atlanta Apartment Association Slack. They're called workspaces. So I have 3 different workspaces. I've got Atlanta Apartment Association, I've got a GSAE one, and I've got this is when I used to be part of Novi. I'm still part of a team who speaks and I guess consults with Novi. So I'm still part of their channels as well. So I'm gonna go into the GSAE one. So let's see how easy it is to switch between 3 totally different universes and have conversations. So I'm in the GSAE. When you see up top, we have channels. You'll always see a general channel. So you can go through here, and this is just everybody who comes in is inside this general channel. I don't know if you hear that little clicking sound and you see these notifications popping up in the top right, but that means I'm getting messages. Oh, look, I see over here, I've got a red and a 3 next to it. Damien's sending me messages over here. Nope, doing nothing. I can't type it either. So I'm going to send a GIF or a GIF, whatever you want to call it, and you can send out that. So this is kind of a fun way that you can go through here and you can do all these different emoji responses to someone's conversation. So to show that you've, really what people use it as, they show it to, they use that to show that they've seen a message, is they'll do fun little things like that. The Pyjama Brigade is sending me messages too. Leave me alone. So you can have a lot of fun communicating that way. To share a file, you can attach, you can do links, you can do files right here. When you share a file, let me go and grab my guacamole recipe that I just grabbed for Damien. I'm gonna drag it over. I'll just grab my picture of Slack. So upload that and say, this is my new fave. So I've just shared a file to that group and now everybody can see it. And there's Russ Webb chiming in. Although he's not actually here, he can be part of this conversation too. So you see the white dot up here next to the T. That means inside that workspace, I've got a new conversation there too. There are 175 million things I could show you about how to do Zoom. That's a bit of an exaggeration. But what you see here are your channels. Like I mentioned before, we have the Tech Ninjas channel. There's the Pyjama Brigade channel. We've just created one for the communications SIG to have their own as well. And then you have your direct messages. So these are one-to-one messages like I had with Kelly or like I had with Damien. So you see the different ways you can communicate with people that way. So I see that there are some chat things. I don't know if those are questions I'm supposed to be answering right now, but I'm happy to go and address that there. So can channels function as listservs? I'm sorry, Barbara, let me get to that. Can channels serve as function as listservs? Yes. So that actually gets me to a point. I'm going to answer your question, but I want to get somewhere else first. Slack only works if people use it. I know that's a dumb thing to say, but think about if you mail someone a letter. If they never open it, you haven't communicated with them. If you call somebody and they don't answer the phone, you have not communicated with them. If you send them an email and it goes into their spam folder, you have not communicated. If you send someone a Slack message and they don't have the Slack window open, they're not reading it. For Slack to work, the people using it have to have it open and have to use it. I know that sounds dumb, but like inside my own office, we actually don't use it that effectively. It has not been pushed throughout the office to use Slack that effectively. So it's not a tool that we use a lot right now, which makes me very, very sad because there's a lot of people who just haven't bought into it. So it is extremely important that if you're using this, you have to push this throughout the rest of the company so that it's effective. It's only effective if people have it open. You can have it on your phone. There's an app, so you can get notifications on your phone. You will get notifications if you are tagged directly. So like I said in those channels, you can do @Mike. I'll get a notification if it's directed at me or if it's a one-to-one message that you saw before. But if someone sends a message to an entire channel and you're not tagged in it, you won't get a notification. You'll still see there's a message, but you won't get tagged in it that there is a message waiting for you. So, can it serve as a listserv? Absolutely, it can serve as a listserv. People can put in questions inside those channels. The rest of the world can reply. To me, it's much more effective because it's not like sending an email, waiting for an email to go to everybody, then someone replies to an email, then it goes to everybody. This is much more like, almost like it's more like a chat room almost when you get into a listserv conversation. Somebody throws a question in, you can have 10 people typing answers at the same time and it's just flowing through really quickly. So to me, it's a much, much more effective version of a listserv. So Wendy says, tell our new folks how to get into the Pyjama Brigade. If you are interested in being part of these anywhere in the Slack world, I think, Wendy, am I okay to invite everybody into the Slack channel? Email me and I can get you invited. My email address, Wendy can send it out or you got it in the list, but it's mpennington@atl-apt.org. You can find me in the directory online too. That's probably the easiest. So email me, I'll get you in the Slack world. If there are other leaders of committees and SIGs, I have no problem creating those channels and I can show you how to manage the channels and invite other people in. I think it could be a very cool way for committees to communicate with each other.
Mike, there's a question. How does it differ from Microsoft Teams?
Haven't spent a lot of time in Microsoft Teams myself, but I think Microsoft Teams is a much, much bigger, I think Microsoft has built a very good product with Microsoft Teams. It's a massive collaboration tool it's more, I think Microsoft Teams is more about, hey, let's all share screen and collaborate on this one document together that we've put, and now let's drag over a conversation from here. I know there's that spreadsheet that was going to relate to this PowerPoint. It's bringing in a whole lot more. To me, Microsoft Teams is a collaboration tool and Slack is a communications tool, if that makes any sense. That's my understanding of it. Can you delete conversations by date to comply with records retention policies? You can delete messages. So there's a couple of different things to talk about too. This is a freemium software like most of them are now. There's a free version, there's a paid version. The free version, which GSAE has, you can do almost everything you can do with the paid version. But what it limits it to is after 10,000 messages, it no longer is saving those messages. So they will automatically clear out once you get to 10,000 messages. With the paid version, you do not lose your messages. Now it ain't cheap to go with the paid version. It's $6 per user per month. So for an association, you've got 1,000 members, you're paying $6,000 a month. That doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense. Most go with the free version. So the deletion of conversations would be a manual process, as far as I know. There may be a better answer than that from Slack, but that's all I know. Is there a Slack app on the desktop similar to Skype where you can close and it pops up? Yes. So this is the desktop app that I'm using right here, Hester. So that's what this is. If I had it closed, I actually had it closed at work yesterday, and I got a bunch of messages popped up, and I still got notifications on the desktop. So you don't have to have it open, and it definitely doesn't have to be a web page. Like Damien's talking about using multiple screens. When I was at Novi, I had 3 screens. One was dedicated to Slack. It was 100% Slack all the time. Let's keep going. Add to Pyjama Brigade. Yes, we can do that. Notification. Yes, you can set notification preferences. Very similar to Slack. Move to Teams. Okay. Any other questions? Looks like all the chat things have been covered, I think. Okay.
All right.
I think that goes to LKS to show us how to Zoom.
Awesome. Thank you, Chief Slacker. So I am making an executive decision here because you guys, 92% of you know how to use Zoom. I would say 100% because you're all on Zoom right now. And there's certainly a lot of settings and preferences and things about Zoom, but I'm going to flip and let Carl go next. And then, because we are also running up to the top of the hour. I don't know those of you who have lunch plans in your kitchen or whatnot might need to go, but we can certainly stay late and come back to Zoom at the end. But I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Carl right now.
Okay, and given the interest in time and that I have a 12 o'clock hard stop for my next meeting, I'll just tell you a story based on, wow, what a difference a week makes. So in my introduction, I mentioned it was last Wednesday, we were just sort of talking at the senior leadership team level. It's like, well, what would meeting expectations do if they did a 15-day shelter in place announcement? Because of our 100 employees, about 35 work remote all the time, but there was still the 65 or so that were in either our Atlanta or Denver offices. So we sent out last Thursday a message late afternoon and said, hey, why doesn't everybody take Friday to think about what they would need to work remotely the following week? Well, nobody read anything but the subject line in that email, and basically when that email went out at 3 o'clock on Thursday, everybody shut off their computers and went home, and nobody showed up on Friday. They were already all working remote. Some prepared, some not prepared, some not prepared. So what did we not expect? It was kind of first the silly but important stuff, because people were more concerned about, hey, I'm embarrassed. The people that work from home all the time, they have a nice office and they've got this great background and they always look professional, and my house doesn't look that good, so I don't want to turn on my video. They were, so they were arguing whether or not do they have to be on screen. I didn't put any makeup on. I'm wearing my glasses, and I never wear my glasses at work. I only wear contacts. And it was silly, but important to people. So basically we had to send out some recommendations to people and say, we called it full mullet. Just dress business on top and party on the bottom. It doesn't matter if nobody's going to see it. I'm actually wearing yoga pants right now. Kidding. The second thing we didn't expect was sort of the management stuff for the managers who didn't ever work with remote employees. How do they manage their schedules? Or even the employees, do they work a 4-hour day? No, but you don't want them working at a 12-hour day either, which is something that I think that happens more often with remote employees. They forget to do some of the things that Amy was talking about, like take lunch, go for a walk, do normal things, get out of your chair. The third thing we were unprepared for, and this was mostly me, I was thinking of, okay, I've got plenty of remote employees. Now I have all remote employees, but this isn't a normal work from home. This was last Thursday after we sent out the announcement. Then they started closing schools. So now you've got two parents at home. For instance, I've got an employee, her and her husband are working home, and they have 5 school-age children. So all of a sudden they're dealing with, we don't have 5 extra laptops. We have, you know, some iPads and things like that. And then when there's 7 of us online, do you even have the bandwidth at home to handle that? And who's going to be the homeschool teacher? So we found ourselves, as far as needing management skills, to say, okay, we're going to have a little flexibility. So somebody's workday might start early, then they have to deal with their kids, then they're working late. So flexibility is was a key to one of the things that we're dealing with. What is working is, fortunately, it was just a couple of weeks before this all happened, we switched our phones from the actual physical handsets on your desk to a thing called Call Tower. And Call Tower it's an application that enabled us to take those business phones and transfer them to people's laptop or cell phone or tablet, or they can move the device between them. And then we paired them with these Sennheiser SC30 headsets, which are optimized for Skype for Business, so they have HD voice clarity and all that. So when everybody went home, their office phone went home with them, which was the problem with the people that work remotely. Quite often they would forget to transfer their work phone to their cell phone, and then calls would go unanswered. That issue has completely cleared itself with this setup we have. We also had moved to an Office 365 SharePoint environment, which is like what Damien was talking about with Dropbox. There's no issues, no VPN issues or security issues as far as everybody getting to whatever files they need to do their job. So we got the remote phones, and we got the remote access to all the files and the working papers that we need. Unfortunately, okay, we got just a couple of minutes. What is not working is meetings right now, and it's a shame, and I feel horrible for anybody that's a hotelier or 100% in the meeting space, because friends of ours are getting furloughed for months without pay, and I feel horrible about that. As a multi-association management company, we've got many associations that are dealing with their annual meetings having to be canceled or postponed. And it's really devastating, and I feel horrible about that. What also we're seeing is these conference and remote platforms starting to fail because they weren't built for 100% of the United States all of a sudden deciding to go remote. So we've had issues with Skype for Business, with Zoom, any of the other meeting platforms where people can log in, or the meeting starts and then other people can't log in. So what we've had to do to accommodate that is we have a backup phone option, non-video option for all our meetings, because basically the platforms are getting overwhelmed. And with 1 minute left, or no minutes left, I'll end my story there, but it's been super interesting moving from in office basically overnight to remote and learning on the fly. But thank goodness there's a lot of great technology, Office 365, Dropbox, ShareFile, to get access to files and whatnot. And it's, but let's pray that this is over for our friends in the hotel business, because it's bad out there. All right. Thank you.
Carl. Okay, everyone. Well, it is on the hour now. I'm happy to stay late for anyone who wants to talk about Zoom. But before we do that, and before those of you go who need to leave, let's have some time. We want to hear from you all, from those of you. I think there's 70-something% who weren't working remote last week, like Carl. Would love to hear what your challenges have been, what things we can do as the Pyjama Brigade SIG to help you through this time. So please share, ask questions about any of the things we've talked about or things we haven't talked about. So the floor is open. Be sure and unmute yourself first.
And I'm sorry, y'all. I gotta bust out for another meeting. Apologize.
Thanks, Carl.
Right.
Thank
Thanks,
you
Carl.
so much.
Thank you.
So one thing, as we're all moving towards remote working, continue to wash your hands, and please, even though no one can smell you, please continue to wash yourself. That's really a note for me, not for everybody else, but just so you know. Just share it out.
I got nothing. From a housekeeping standpoint, thanks to those of you. I know some people are going to have to drop off. Lori, I think we should, stay on for Zoom. And we're also, I appreciate Jared. Thank you, dear. Clean your devices too. But I would love if you're not comfortable trying to get off mute, use chat to give some follow-up questions. We will make sure that one of our 5 folks that have been leading this today will get back to the group. It looks like we're going to have lots of folks getting on our Slack channel, which personally I need to learn how to use myself. So yeah, and we also, as we mentioned earlier, we have 2 more of these already pre-scheduled for anybody that wants to hop on. It sounds like we definitely need one about managing remote. If you are a supervisor or a project manager, I mean, if you are depending on your colleagues to help you get stuff done, I think that's a worthy conversation as well. So Lori, let's go ahead and turn it over to you for some Zooming.
Okay. Another thing I'd like to say is several folks mentioned in the chat that they use Microsoft Teams, and I've never seen that. I would love one of these weeks when we're doing this, if one of you would be willing to do a short little demo. I'm very familiar with Slack. We use that at SAIS, but I'd love to see the other options out there. So whoever uses Teams, if you want to contact Wendy and share with us. Let's see here. Let me share my screen. All right. Can you see my screen now? Damien, nod your head if you can see my screen. Okay, awesome. Thank you. So we'll just talk a little bit about Zoom. You all are familiar with it. Please ask questions and correct me, because I certainly don't know everything about it. You've already heard about SAIS. Okay, so here are the basic plan options for Zoom. SAIS has a pro account, so we pay $14.99 per month per person. You can get a free account. Let's see here. We also have Zoom Phone. So this came up in the chat also. I know Bill Anderson recently switched to Zoom Phone. We love it. It's fantastic. And Carl mentioned whatever they're using, Call Tower, I think. So there's lots of options out there. Zoom Phone is $10 per month per user. So this is what the interface looks like. This is the app interface on your computer. It's nice and clean, and this is what I use most of the time. And over here is the website interface. You do have to go to the website to do a few things that you can't do through the app, but 90% of the time I use the app on my computer. So this is the Zoom Phone interface. I thought maybe you weren't familiar with that, so I wanted to show that. So this is what shows up in the app on my computer screen. This is the call history and how I can very easily type in your number and give you a phone call. And this is what it looks like when someone is calling me on the screen. So I can just click accept or decline. And then if someone leaves a message, it will transcribe it here, or I can also play it out loud. So here are just a few helpful tips, which you probably already know, and we saw some of these today. Always mute thyself unless speaking. The background noises that don't sound loud to you in your office can be quite distracting and much louder on the other end than you realize. Where a headset, if needed, Carl talked about that. We had one person in our office of 9 who's, for some reason, her computer audio was just terrible. And every time we were on a staff call, there was a lot of background noise, and we got her a headset, and it's great. Attire. Does it match your organizational culture? So we talked about that a little bit earlier. Damien's got on his button down and his bow tie today. Very much matches his organization's culture. Again, you know, for those of you who just suddenly are working from home this week and haven't had time to think about these things, just some things to consider if you start having lots of member-facing or vendor-facing Zoom experiences. Turn off your computer notifications if you're presenting or screen sharing. I sometimes forget to do that. I did do it today for you. Limit interruptions when possible. We mentioned that earlier, and you know, these are not normal times, but everyone's being flexible. For large groups, you can auto mute all participants. So Wendy, I think you did that at the beginning after we got on. So as I said earlier, I learned that this is setting. Mine shows 20 per screen. This is what you've been seeing, except this is a call that I had yesterday, and you can scroll between the screens. You saw that. This is a tip if you're using Zoom breakout rooms, which we used yesterday for the very first time at SAIS. We had over 80 people on a Zoom, and we separated them by basically by metro area, so by geography. And one of my colleagues, I'm sure we didn't do it the best way. We're learning as we go. But he spent about the first 20 minutes of the Zoom while we were all chatting and presenting some information, putting everybody in their breakout rooms. And then he pressed the special button, and we all went to our pre-assigned breakout room by metro area. So we're regional, so we cover the Southeast. But what he needed to know is he needed to know each person's identity. So like this S1943, you know, he didn't know if that person was in Charlotte or Chattanooga or Nashville or Atlanta, because that wasn't the name we had on our registration list. So if you're doing breakouts, there's definitely some things to learn, and we're learning those as we go. And of course, adding a photo if when you don't have your video turned on. Setting up a virtual background. So as you can see, I have the city of Nashville behind me. You can do that in the app interface. There's a virtual background section, and I've uploaded all these photos here. And then this is just a screenshot from a call I was on yesterday where this person has a lovely ocean view. And then I use a camera app called Eyeglasses. That is for Macs. It will allow me to, let's see if I can do it right here. If you're looking at my face, I can zoom in or out, and it has a lot of different effects that I can use. And I'm doing that because I have a green screen behind me. I have the kind that attaches to my chair. I ordered it off Amazon. But if I weren't using this app, I would not be able to zoom in enough, and you would be able to see the border of where my green screen is. And that's all that I have for you. So y'all please jump in. I know Mike and Damien have been using Zoom a lot, and what are your questions?
You've got a question about breakout rooms.
All right. Let's see here.
Just what is a breakout room?
Oh, okay,
How does
sure.
it work?
So we could do breakout rooms right now, probably. Damien, are you figuring that out on the fly?
Wendy, can you make me co-host again?
So when you have a lot of people, you can assign everyone. So we could say right now, like, you know, everyone who works at an association in Atlanta can go into a breakout room. Everyone who works in an association in somewhere else could go into a breakout room. Whatever your criteria are, you could take 5 people in this breakout room, and then we would just go into a smaller Zoom. Are you gonna, Damien, are you figuring that out for us? It can also assign them randomly. So like I said, we had over 80 people yesterday, and we divided them by metro area. But we just clicked the button, and when that happened, all these people on the screen disappeared, and only the people that we had pre-assigned to the breakout rooms. And so we had a little chat. We had about 15 minutes for folks to chat with each other from their metro area. And then we came back together at the end like this for a wrap up.
I'm assuming that's admin control, just to say, okay,
Yeah.
15 minutes is up and I'm closing all the breakouts.
Yes, and you can put a note up. So about 2 minutes before the breakouts were over, a little note appeared at the top of the screen that said your breakout will end in 2 minutes, and then a little countdown clock comes up 60 seconds before, and it counts down, so you know that your breakout is going to be ended.
And here we go.
All right. So you're going to click the join breakout room and it will disappear for a second. So don't let that bother you.
Does everybody have their own little room? I'm so concerned. I didn't like that at all.
Why not? I did it pretty quickly, but
I didn't like it.
going.
See people in your breakout rooms? I was alone too. So that
I was alone, yeah.
Well, I didn't give you much time, but
Yeah.
and not everyone jumped into the room, but it creates a space that it's exactly like this experience with just fewer people.
Yeah. So, you know, I don't know if you're using Zoom for like a board meeting or something, you could break off into your committees could meet and then come back. Or if your staff needs to do that, depending on your staff size. Sorry, I wasn't reading the chat while I was talking, so I don't know if there were any other questions. Anything else?
Yeah, I don't remember any other questions out there. Some, like a few of us had just signed up or are already using Zoom Pro, so
Yeah.
learning with it. So
Yeah, it can do a lot more than even I know about. I will say we love the Zoom phone too. What other any other questions, thoughts, everyone, as you're figuring this out? And so I think next week, Wendy, we're gonna meet at the same time,
Same bat time, same bat channel.
And we'll talk about managing employees remotely
I
and
think
maybe
so.
have someone do a quick demo of Teams for us.
Yes.
I think you could probably add managing yourself, kind of piggybacking some of the stuff that, I mean, because, you know, some people's personality is they're more productive at home than they are at work. Some
Yeah.
people's personalities, they cannot be productive unless they're in an office. So I think there are probably tips and tricks about how to make sure you are as productive as possible when you are working at home. How do you limit distractions? Like some people get up and take a shower so you know you're in work mode. So there are a lot of things about making yourself, like self-management, I think would be good too.
And we're also, you'll notice from the Pyjama Brigade resources, it's an amalgam of a lot of stuff right now. I'm actually thinking that we may even keep some of these tools on that page and then create a separate page for virtual meetings, because I feel like that's something that's going to continue to grow. And I don't want us to get so overwhelmed with this page that, and we'll update with the information that people presented today, and continue to answer any questions you have. Thanks for joining us. I know this is a really weird time for everybody. I think Carl mentioning what our friends and neighbors and colleagues are going through in the hotel side of things, and what our fellow association execs are going through with meetings. We are not currently planning to do a program on that, but we are pushing out other groups' programs. I think right now PCMA is doing a better job than we are, MPI, some others. So we want to make sure that we're not giving you second best information, that we're giving you access to the folks that are really in the trenches right now. And thanks, y'all. This was, I think this is really great. And if nothing else, we all got to say hi to everybody. And if you want to unmute before we leave, I'm gonna